Welcome to Saving Europe. I'm the novelist and historian Henry Viner Brooks, and in this series we're following the lives and travels of two of history's unsung heroes. The decisive leadership shown by the 6th century monk Columbanus and the 20th century statesman Robert Schuman helped rescue Western civilization in two very different dark ages. So, joined by my two sons, I'm on a 4,000-mile, 12-country post-Brexit odyssey to find out if these men and these dark ages can teach us anything for today. In this episode, we'll follow the monastic pioneer Columbanus into the Jura Mountains of Switzerland and consider an issue that has vexed every parent, every mentor, every entrepreneur and leader since time began, namely that of transmission and succession. In Switzerland, we'll get a whole medieval village and abbey to ourselves, and we'll explore a hidden hilltop hermitage and discuss the thorny issue of Christianity and power. And we'll even find time to freshen up before crossing the Alps to the Swabian Sea for more cultural and historical delights. If you're finding this content helpful, then please return the favour by liking this video, subscribing to the channel and perhaps even sharing it with a friend. And also do check out the new book which accompanies this series. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the Jura Mountains of Switzerland. We've left Columbanus and the remainder of his doughty monastic band in Gall and followed one of his fledgling Irish disciples called Ursanne as he flies the nest south to the stunning Doubs Valley. We've seen it happen before with Gall's older brother, Gall, and we will see it twice more before Columbanus finally crosses the Alps to Italy. But I thought it was worth pausing to consider these issues of transmission and succession. That is, if I could borrow Ruskin's phrase, how can we, having perfected the functions of our own lives, have the widest possible helpful influence over the lives of others? And, just as important, having given the next generation roots, how can we give them wings as well? We arrived late at night and pitched up in a car park upstream from the medieval gem, St. Ursanne. And the next morning, while still half asleep and worse, totally decaffeinated, I sallied forth to the town in search of provisions. Columbanus came here, or at least when he passed through Gall, having endured the long row up the Rhine. One of the trusty followers, Ursanne, decided he would stay here, founded a hermitage which became a town. Steep-sided valleys. I'm looking forward to seeing the monastery. I'm just going to potter in. I've left the boys sleeping. I'm just going to get some, I don't know, do they have pain au chocolat in Switzerland? Some bread at the very least, so we can have some breakfast when I get back. But it's rather nice. It's seen a garage here, and it's some relic of the abbey. You can see this beautiful town. I must say this is very picturesque. See these massive steep-sided limestone cliffs. I can see caves. I wonder if Ursanne copied his master. You hear the tinkle of bells from some goats. Rather nice downriver. Let's go and see if we can get into the abbey. I heard the bell ringing a few minutes ago. It's actually one of the finest medieval towns in all of Switzerland. And picturesque is hardly an adequate word to describe it. But to have the whole place to myself, as if it had been an abandoned movie set, was a treat I had not expected. Since childhood, I'd always loved the simplicity of Romanesque architecture above all other later styles, and certainly more than Gothic. But it was only recently that I discovered I shared this love with Simone Weil, who is one of the 20th century's most extraordinary women. For Weil, those centuries before Gothic, that is, before the 13th century Albigensian Crusade, and before a worldly church had been allied with expansionist state power, in fact, before what she called the era of spiritual totalitarianism, those 10th and 11th centuries were the true Renaissance. It is a forceful point well made and not unconnected with Columbanus' actions later in this episode, as we shall see.
Oh yeah, looks like we can get into the chapel. I don't know under which circumstances that Ursinnius left the band, but Dom Gall, Deculus, had left because of age, and maybe Ursinnius was of the same kind of pioneering apostolic gifting as Columbanus. I think it's the mark of a great leader, not just that you're great and you make everyone else know it, but that you're able to transmit the gift that you are and the gifts that you have to the next generation. Inside the church, quite a lot of Baroque decoration, rather uneasily superimposed onto a medieval structure. Some rather fine capitals. It's very unusual. It's rather beautiful, and they're painted in like a, well, not an ochre, almost like a umber, and this is beautiful blue. It's rather a pleasant effect.
The Irishman Ursinnius, or Ursanne, died around 620, having been in the Doubs Valley for about a decade. His 7th century sarcophagus is encased inside the bling of this Baroque altar.
There's a crypt this way, it says. Oh yes. This is right under the apse. The decoration used almost could be like Pompeii, the way it's about 4 foot high here. Okay. It looks like there's a sarcophagus lid here. Ooh. This is quite late. Some fascinating medieval wall paintings here.
The Romanesque capitals and tympanum were for me probably the architectural highlight of the entire trip, though they were carved many centuries after Ursinnius' time. One source says that he came here with 2 other companions, one called Fromond, an Austrasian nobleman possibly of royal blood, and another called Imier. And having arrived at Mount Rapet, Ursinnius suggested they threw their walking staffs over the edge, and wherever they landed they would set up their hermitages. All of them became spiritual leaders in these valleys, and where I'm going now is the site of Ursinnius' first cave shelter. Later he built a monastery for his disciples, and that eventually passed to the Benedictines in the 11th century.
I might be in for a bit of a climb. This is the way, apparently, to the hermitage. There was one sign in town, and then it was blissfully silent, so I followed my nose. I tell you what, these limestone cliffs are very steep. For a man who has not had his coffee. So typical. Have one of Columban's friends to find himself his little oratory. The hermitage is this way. Let's go and see what's up here. Yeah, you can see we're coming up. Another oratory. This is called the Chapel of the Hermitage. Little Baroque altarpiece. Just wonder whether Ursinius had anyone with him when he came here. Look at that. Sun's coming up. New day dawning. I imagine Ursinius up here singing on his own. That's extraordinary. There's a candle burning. And here is Ursinius. This marks a spot where it says Ursinius lived at the beginning of the 7th century. A reclining figure meant to depict the pensive Ursinius. Wooden sculpture of the bear is added later. Oh dear. Wooden sculpture of the bear has been pushed over. I'm looking up here. Little alcove maybe for putting a light. What a strange thought. It's places like this that then become towns. So again, I just considering this this thought of people leaving the Columban band. There's no sign of a cloud over Ursinius' head. I hope that Columbanus was happy that someone, wished to go. I just don't there's so little written about it. Oh, look at this. Little cantilever walkway over a cliff. Oh, that's the sun. Oh. I think I'll take this rather steep route. Succession. Columbanus and his trusty friends. I do find this one of the hardest things myself. It's one of the initial reasons why I went into writing when I had cancer 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that I wanted to transmit ideas, stories, thinking maybe I wouldn't survive the cancer, but I did. So yeah, I just, that's one of the reasons I wrote. I'm not like Columbanus, I understand that. There are some people with such extraordinary self-belief. Just coming down some steep steps. Some people have such extraordinary belief that they carry people by the very force of their personality sometimes. Also by, of course, the force of the ideas which they propound. If you were living here 1400 years ago, I think the force of the ideas would carry themselves. So, my own children, Tom and Will, Jonathan, Peter, Abigail, Harriet, you want so much for your children to, your ceiling to be their floor. I think that was the expression. You don't want them to waste time in the school of hard knocks. But, I tell you, it's very hard. I read plenty of books. They make it sound easy, but I realise now how little I know. Right, anyway, let's find a boulangerie.
And if you sense some uncertainty in my voice, it's not just the fact that I haven't had any coffee this morning, but also because all of our parenting and leadership is in a sense a work in progress with no certain outcome. As a parent of 6 very different children, I'm beginning to realise that the quality and dependability of our love is every bit as important as the quantity of good data that we drum into them. And when we say, no matter what goes wrong, we've always got your back, we'll always be here for you, it creates a springboard for great enterprise. But however we fare in this area of transmission and succession, I think we can assume that Columbanus knew what he was about. We have seen it happen before, and we'll see it happen twice again. Wherever he leaves a disciple, they seem to contain within their spiritual and intellectual formation the very seed from which a moral civilization can grow and flourish. Ursinius, for example, is depicted in art with a book and a lily, denoting his intellectual and moral integrity, which is not a bad legacy to leave behind you. What parent or professor would not be proud of that? We travel north and rejoined Columbanus' party among the picturesque lakes of Switzerland. We pitched up at Valensay on a glorious evening. At the other end of this stunning lake is a village called Tuggen. A Carolingian monk of the 9th century called Walafrid Strabo gives us an extra story here that Jonas does not. Now, Strabo is writing 200 years later, so what he is handing down to us may not be true, but it is worth recounting all the same. He says that Columbanus would have settled in Tuggen were it not for the fact that he was forced out by locals after Gall, purportedly, burned down 2 of their heathen temples and tossed their idols into the lake. Now, considering that they were travelling up the Rhine to Bregenz on the orders of their new royal benefactor, this would seem like a strange diversion. Besides, something very like it will happen in Bregenz, so perhaps the account was confused, but either way, it invariably ends in disaster when Christians have played with fire. This temptation to fight fire with fire, this imposition of belief by force, is what Simone Weil would call totalitarian spirituality, and it has scarred European history. A church that took up the sword that Jesus told Peter to put down and tried to live by it almost died by it. When the poet W.H. Auden came back to Christian faith during the war, he called out this sort of Constantinian Christianity whenever he saw it. For him, Christ coming into the world as a baby was the whole point. He was not coming to shore up anyone else's power structure, he was coming to end all of it. As Auden put it, the child marked the end of the machine, the end of the military-industrial complex, the end of force. But as we watch the dying sun set the mountains on fire, I shelve this thorny issue of Christians and power for another day, and I was certainly not going to let it spoil such a glorious evening.
Well, good morning. This is an uncharacteristic little clip just to see sort of the highs and lows of accommodation in our van. But what we lack in space, we make up for with the view. My job this morning is to get up. I've got 4 postcards, the only ones I've bought when I was last in November in France, so I've still not written them a week later. So I must write those. I've got to just download the footage from, maybe we're going to have, because of this gorgeous place, we're going to have half a day off, do some swimming and diving, and then what? And then go to St. Gallen and look at this amazing library, and they've got an exhibition about the Irish manuscripts there. So, time to get up. Diving board is a real treat. But we've got work to do. Go to stay with family, my cousin's wife's mother, on the Bodensee, which is a lake bigger than this, a 60-kilometre long stretch in the Upper Rhine. Anyway, let's get going.
Next time on Saving Europe, we follow Columbanus and his party to Lake Constance. We're looking for evidence of their time here and exploring their legacy. Starting in Bregenz, we'll move west around the lake to a UNESCO World Heritage Island called Reichenau. And there, we will not only discover the labours of past heroes, but also sense their challenge across time to us as we live out our callings in uncertain times. So join us next time on Saving Europe. Remember also that this journey was part of the research for a book which uses the lives of Columbanus and Schuman to explore the unlikely arrival, survival, victory and atrophy of European civilization. Do follow the links below to find out more. Please let us know what you thought of this episode, what you liked, what you didn't, what was new to you. Just start a conversation below in the comments section. And of course, if you found the content helpful, then we're pretty sure you're going to like this next one suggested here. But also while you're there, don't forget to help us by subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.